Good morning. Day 11 of basic things I think we ought to be doing to get children to the stage where they really are fit to learn. And what I want to look at in detail today is heart rate variance. Yesterday we looked at breathing, and that makes an enormous difference on heart rate variance, but today I want to look in detail why I think we ought to be explicitly teaching year after year after year heart rate variance. This is a screenshot taken from HeartMath, a very useful organisation who make heart rate variance monitoring equipment and some really quite useful equipment to help children make their heart rates coherent. What they show you on the first slide is an erratic heart rate. And it really doesn't matter if this person is dashing around playing sport or whether they're resting. Their heart rate is super erratic, and that is not good for their body. What we want a human to have is a really coherent heart rate. It's working at the same coherent rate. It's not erratically dashing from one level to another. And controlling coherent heart rate is very important. And I will show you why. So the basic nuts and bolts of an erratic heart rate are very well outlined by a chap called Dr. Alan Watkins, who has a lovely YouTube video, How to Be Brilliant Every Day. And I cannot too strongly recommend watching it. He's made a fortune out of teaching executives how to control their heart rate variance so that they can think, so they don't make stupid decisions. What happens when your heart rate is erratic is you're getting cortisol pumped to the brain. It knocks out your prefrontal lobes, and so you're not thinking, you're in fight flight. The problem with this is the human body's only designed to be in that state really if it's under attack, which is fine if you're being attacked by bears, but we're not. We're living in a modern world. Our bodies are not designed to put up with the amount of stimulation we have. And we have children on computer games and watching telly and all sorts of other distractions, and their lives are very erratic. And they habitually have got erratic heart rates. And we're kind of getting used to that and think that's normal, and it is not. And we've got to teach children to have coherent heart rates because they can think and develop better. And we don't want people to be in a state where they are hyper alert. There is a stage which is much worse than just the normal erratic heart rate, where we have people in a super hyper alert state. Children who are growing up in really toxic households, often with a very hyper alert parent or a very dangerous setting where the whole family are hyper alert, or things just are seriously dangerous or they're being abused. They need seriously to learn to control their heart rate variance. We need to understand how hyper alert they are, and working with heart rate variance is a very important part of that. The long-term impacts of having an erratic heart rate variance are you're going to have mental health problems. You that juddery person who breaks into tears suddenly or becomes very angry. You don't want to be erratic. You want to be coherent. You want to be making rational decisions. Blood sugar levels become increased and erratic. Weight gain because you're in such a hyper alert state, you're craving sugar all the time. It causes your immune system not to work properly and can cause risks of cancer and so on. You can end up with digestive problems because your gut isn't designed to digest food if you're under attack. It's designed to fight and flee. And so we know from research that people who relax and learn to relax and get a better heart rate variance have much better digestion. The irritable bowel syndrome, the colitis calms down. And of course, being under constant stress can cause heart disease. So this is long-term health prevention, it's long-term fitness, and that is about long-term learning because the system works as a whole. In terms of learning, if you feel under attack, you cannot learn. And we need to be aware of that. So our early start to school and then rushing children into things which are age inappropriate and keeping all their teachers under micromanaged hyper testing is a very toxic environment. All our stakeholders involved in education currently are part of the problem. We have to create an environment that brings people to coherent heart rate, that brings people to good, calm, nurturing environments. And I think if you look at the Scandinavian nurseries, early years settings, they are much better for supporting a child's coherent heart rate variance. My suspicion is that in Britain we actually need to do intergenerational work to calm down the parents and grandparents, because they too have gone through this very toxic system. We've got to bring people to a healthy state. As a sound therapist, I see people who are anxious closing their systems down. So this is a client whose sound process I'm looking at. Decibels are down the y-axis, hertz at the x-axis. I want the sound processing curve ideally to be where the green curve is. And I'm looking at the blue curve, which is the processing of sound on air, which is where I want it to be on the green line. And in the whole section for speech, they've closed down. They feel under attack. They've been through the British education system and they got excluded. Thank you, Harris Academies. And they have over time closed down. They were okay in year 7, and then of course they closed down. So the environment we create creates problems and magnifies those problems. And so what might have been a problem we could have sorted gets bigger and bigger. And I think monitoring heart rate variance is an important part of safeguarding our children. So you've got to manage this heart rate variance. Number one thing is obviously the breathing. You get the breathing going rhythmically, you're thinking of a happy thought, and as the research will show you, the person can come to coherent heart rate variance. Child in care, child from a toxic home environment, you're going to have to work a jolly sight harder, and you may well have to get mum and dad and granny in as well. And that's okay, because the whole of Britain is in a mess. Let's all be honest. We all need to come to better heart rate variance. You need to get primitive reflexes sorted, because some of those naturally trip people into an anxious state, and that dysregulates the heart rate. If you don't know where you are in space and your proprioception is not working, you're not going to feel calm. So get those primitive reflexes sorted, get people really functioning well in terms of motor skills. Really worth buying some technology, I think, particularly for any school in a poor area, and I would say any school dealing with very rich children, because my experience, bottom, top half of society, things can go wildly out of hand. We need to understand heart rate variance. Every school's got to have the guts to say to parents, a child, I cannot get them to a regular heart rate. Can we all have a look at how the whole family is working together? There are games you can play to get everybody in tune. And so as a family, what we do, lots of people say, just rub the back of your hand. Just rub the back of your hand, just slowly. And you're going to rub the back of your hand in exactly the same speed as I am. And we're just going to sit here and we're just rubbing the back of our hand at exactly the same speed. And you're feeling exactly what I'm feeling. And we're coming into tune. Very, very simple. And such a very simple, calming activity can bring people into tune. There's the game where you say to people, you sit in a circle and you say, I can hear 5 things. And you take turns to say what you can hear. And that has the effect of everybody in the circle focuses on hearing the same things. Then you say, oh, I can see 5 things. And again, you take it in turns to say what you can see. And everybody comes into tune and is saying what they can see. And so they're sharing the same visual thing. You're getting a grand and splendid view day after day of my wardrobes. Then you say, I can feel 5 things. And so I can say, I can feel my toes in my socks. And we're all then focusing on our toes, and we can all feel our socks and so on. And then we go around the group and everybody shares the same feeling. It's bringing the person into their own body, but it's also sharing feelings within the group. It's really important. Coming into tune, coming to having really calm, in tune rhythms. A lot of my families, I don't want them to speak because they're not good at that. They have a habit of being rude to each other. I make them sit quietly, silently, throw a ball to each other. Just throwing a ball. If you have two balls in a circle, it's even more fun. And what happens is you start smiling at each other because it's funny. I'm throwing this ball, but I've got to catch that ball. We start communicating and being in tune. It doesn't matter if you drop it, it doesn't matter what's happening. All we're doing it for is to say, hi, we're coming to tune. And it's all part of being rhythmic, keeping a coherent heart rate. Singing is an important part of being in tune. And I would like to see children singing every day. I think it's a very important part of sound processing. I think it's an important part of breathing. I think it's an important part of rhythm. It is a really important multi-sensory skill, and humans like all singing in tune. Choral singing is good for children. Choral speaking, if you're not confident at singing with your class. So there's all sorts of lovely things like bear hunt, like each peach, pear, plum, that you can get the whole class saying together. And coming into tune and knowing these things makes people's heart rates work better together. And having happy, positive thoughts. Literally just stopping the class, doing something nice and just saying, just a minute, let's all appreciate we're all happy. Because we often rush and forget to just go, oh, actually, we're all quite happy. And you think about it. I can remember sitting on a sofa with my gran. She had a green sofa, all my nephew, my cousins were there. And we'd be making toast and my gran would be knitting. And she would say she was happy because she was. Nothing made her happier than waiting hand and foot on all her grandchildren. But that sense of, I just like being with you. Keeping people secure is important. Security is hugely important. We live in really quite frightening times. I see families in Croydon who are in insecure accommodation. They're having to share kitchens, which means their food security is a nightmare. There's rat infestations all over the show, so they don't feel secure in any space. They're on temporary work or no work. They're waiting for family income supplement payments or whatever. Nothing in their life is secure, and then they're having to run around on public transport, which can be a bit patchy. Everything is very expensive, they're not surviving. We have got to make our society fit to support families, and within those families, children to develop properly. At the other end of the scale, I go on to gated estates. They are super anxious, they're about to be burgled, everything's going to be robbed from them, and they'll lose everything. I would stop doing whatever they're doing and go for a more secure lifestyle. But they're also super insecure about the neighbours. I see kitchens being ripped out of every other house in the estates. They worry constantly about their neighbours. They worry constantly about what the boss thinks of them. They are working endlessly to profit targets, this target, that target. They might be super rich, but they are super poor in terms of security and happiness. We have got to get to the point where we actually recognise that just being a happy family, sitting on a sofa, is okay. That's as good as it gets. And that is all heart rate variance. It's all around heart rate variance, but we have to get people's heart rate variance to a good state. So I'd like to see heart rate variance in the curriculum. These are my contact details, and this is sound therapy equipment you can pick up if you want to use it to help you with various aspects of child development. Thank you very much for listening. I shall see you again tomorrow.